General Hospital spoilers tease that Port Charles is about to be rocked by one of the deepest, most gut-wrenching secrets in Quartermaine history: Brook Lynn Quartermaine's past decision to give her own baby up for adoption. The confession she will make to her husband, Harrison Chase, threatens to shatter their marriage, upend friendships, and reveal that the father of the child is none other than Dante Falconeri, a man whose loyalty and sense of honor will be tested like never before. In the coming weeks, as Brook Lynn's carefully constructed life begins to crack, alliances will form in secret investigations and DNA tests, tears will fall, and when the truth finally emerges, Port Charles will never be the same. Moonlight filtered through the curtains of the Quartermaine guest suite, casting silvery patterns across the plush carpet as Brook Lynn lay awake on the bed, her heart pounding like a frantic drum. Only hours ago, she had feigned exhaustion after a long day at Deception's marketing meeting, but the weight of her secret had become impossible to contain. In the silence, she could almost hear the distant hum of the city, sirens and late-night chatter, but all she felt was the deafening roar in her own mind. Her fingers traced the edge of her satin pillow, smoothing the fabric as if the simple motion could lull her fears to sleep. She imagined the tiny body she had carried for 9 months, a life that had once kicked and turned deep within her. A life she had given away. Desperation had seized her then, years ago, when scandal threatened her reputation, when her family's legacy teetered on the brink of disgrace. The Quartermaines demanded perfection. Brook Lynn had tried to be both dutiful daughter and modern woman, and in the end, the pressure had become too great. She'd arranged for the baby to be adopted by an out-of-state couple who promised anonymity, safety, and love. Terms she'd clung to as she signed away every legal right. But promises have a way of breaking, and the passage of time had only made her wonder, is that child alive? Did he grow up happy? Did he even know his true heritage? Those questions flared in her mind like embers in dry grass, threatening to ignite a wildfire of regret and longing. By dawn, Brook Lynn had resolved that hiding the truth any longer would be a betrayal, not just to her husband, but to herself. She dressed carefully, choosing a soft cashmere sweater and tailored slacks, the very picture of composure. Yet beneath the calm surface, her breath caught in her throat. At breakfast, she greeted Chase with a smile so practiced it felt foreign on her lips. He looked up from his coffee, concern flickering in his eyes. "Everything all right, love?" he asked, reaching out to touch her hand. Brook Lynn squeezed his fingers, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "We need to talk," she said, her voice breaking like waves on a rocky shore. Chase's brow furrowed. He set down his mug, his body shifting forward. "You're scaring me." She took a deep breath, as if inhaling courage itself. "Chase, back when I was younger, before I knew what I wanted or who I was, I made a decision I deeply regret. I gave up a baby for adoption." Silence crashed over them. Chase's chair scraped as he stood, shock etched across his features. His jaw clenched, 1,000 questions ignited behind his eyes. Brook Lynn watched him, her heart splitting in two, wishing she could take the words back, and yet knowing she never could. For a beat, he said nothing. Then anger flared, sharp as a blade. "You what?" His voice was low, controlled, but every syllable dripped with disbelief. Brook Lynn looked down, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I was young, scared. I thought it was the only way to protect everyone, your family, my family, me. I wanted a fresh start." Chase's hands curled into fists at his sides. "You didn't think to tell me? We're married, Brook Lynn. We promised to share everything." She swallowed past the lump in her throat. "I know. And I'm sorry I lied. But Lulu found out, and she pushed me, said I needed to own up. I didn't want to, but I can't live with the secret anymore." Chase's anger shifted to hurt so deep it made his shoulders slump. "Lulu? She forced you." Brook Lynn nodded, her tears flowing freely now. "She said you deserve the truth, that our marriage couldn't survive on lies. Chase paced the length of the suite, each step heavy with turmoil. Brook Lynn reached for him, but he stepped back. The distance between them felt like an ocean. He stopped at the window, staring out at the awakening city. His mind raced, betrayal, compassion, confusion, love, swirling in a maelstrom that left him breathless. After a long minute, he turned, gaze softening as he looked at her tear-stained face. "Did you know who the father was?" he asked quietly. Brook Lynn's chest tightened. She braced herself for his reaction, for the final fracture of their bond. "It's Dante," she whispered. The name hit him like a freight train. Dante Falconeri, Chase's friend, confidant, and partner on countless cases, stood at the intersection of their lives. He had been there for Brook Lynn, too, a steady presence in her childhood, a boyhood crush she'd never confessed. The implications were staggering. Chase sank onto the bed beside her, head in hands. For a moment, the world ceased to exist. Then he looked up, eyes wet with unshed tears. "Dante?" Brook Lynn nodded, trembling. "He didn't know. I never told him." Chase's voice cracked. "I should leave. I should walk away right now." Tears pooled in Brook Lynn's eyes as she reached out. "Don't. Please." He hesitated, torn between heartbreak and compassion. He wanted vengeance, closure, space. But as he watched her fall apart, he remembered the love that had once bound them so tightly. He couldn't abandon her, not when she needed him most. Finally, he exhaled, voice soft. "Okay, we'll figure this out. But you have to promise me. No more secrets." Brook Lynn nodded, relief mingling with fear. "I promise." And so, a fragile pact was formed. Chase, the steadfast detective, and Lulu Spencer, the fierce investigative reporter who had unearthed Brook Lynn's secret, would join forces in a clandestine quest to find the child, a child who might be alive, or might have been lost to time. They agreed to keep Dante in the dark, fearing that if he learned of his unsuspected son, his world would shatter and derail their search. Chase's role would be straightforward: tap into police resources, follow leads, comb through adoption records, question agencies under the guise of routine inquiries. Lulu, with her journalistic cunning, would handle the more delicate work, gathering clues, tracing whispers in the community, and ultimately procuring a DNA sample from Dante to confirm parentage once and for all. In the hush that followed, Brook Lynn closed her eyes, imagining her child's face. Hazel eyes like Dante's, a hopeful smile, the innocence of youth untouched by scandal. She clung to the fragile hope that the reunion, when it came, would heal old wounds rather than deepen them. Over the next few days, Port Charles itself seemed to whisper rumors of the secret alliance. Chase moved through the precinct with quiet purpose, poring over sealed files, discreetly questioning adoption agents. Each routine visit to the Department of Records brought him closer to a name, a date, a hint of the family that might hold Brook Lynn's baby. At night, he and Lulu plodded over coffee in Kelly's, their heads bent close as they mapped networks of lawyers, agencies, and informal brokers, people who specialized in discreet adoptions during the era when Brook Lynn's child was born. Lulu, ever resourceful, traced a lead to a private adoption firm in upstate New York, one that had a reputation for handling high-profile cases. They discovered a file with Brook Lynn's birth date, signature, and a cryptic notation, "Baby boy," to J&L family. But no first name, no contact information, just an agency code and a date stamped April 15, 2005. Echoes of that long-ago spring blurred as Brook Lynn remembered her morning in the hospital, how she had watched nurses rock a cradle and wondered if one of those infants was hers. Determined to break the impasse, Lulu took on the next assignment, obtaining a DNA sample from Dante without arousing suspicion. She shadowed him at the Metro Court, where he volunteered time teaching self-defense to survivors of trauma and at the WSB Research Lab, where he logged late hours analyzing evidence for unsolved cases. One crisp evening, Lulu slipped into the lab after hours, feigning a need to borrow a pen. As Dante bent to retrieve a pen from his coat, he left a few stray hairs caught in the collar of his jacket. Lulu retrieved a single strand, sealing it in an evidence bag she'd stolen from Chase's car. Her pulse hammered as she pocketed the sample. She knew the risk. If Dante ever discovered her breach of trust, he might never forgive her. Meanwhile, Chase's investigation yielded a breakthrough. The J&L family turned out to be the Jennings, a couple renowned for raising a boy named Gio Martinez, adopted around the same time and fitting the agency's description. Gio, now a striking 20-year-old with dark curls and a smile that lit up social media feeds, seemed an unlikely candidate at first glance. But Chase noticed subtle parallels: a birthmark on Joe's left wrist similar to the one Brook Lynn bore, a penchant for painting, just as Brook Lynn had at that age, and an uncanny resemblance in photos to both Dante and Brook Lynn. Chase presented the dossier to Brook Lynn and Lulu at Kelly's one evening. Brook Lynn's breath caught as she studied Joe's image on Lulu's tablet. He was tall and lean, with eyes that echoed Dante's kindness and her own mischievous spark. For a moment, Brook Lynn was seized by joy and terror. What if Gio resented her? What if the years of silence had wounded him beyond repair? Lulu placed a comforting hand over Brook Lynn's. "We need to do this," she said softly. "For him, for you, for Chase." Brook Lynn nodded, tears glistening. "I want to know the truth." Chase set the plan in motion. He arranged for a routine welfare check at the Martinez household, requesting to confirm Joe's identity for an ongoing juvenile outreach program. Under the guise of verifying information, he would try to retrieve a discarded coffee cup or a tissue with Joe's DNA. But when he arrived, Joe's adoptive parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jennings, proved astute. They politely declined. This was a private family, they insisted. Chase left empty-handed but undeterred. Back at the penthouse, Brook Lynn wrestled with her conscience. Should they push forward, infringing on an innocent man's life? But guilt gnawed at her. She thought of the nights her baby had slept unsheltered by his birth mother's arms, the milestones she'd missed. She owed him the chance to choose, to know his origins and decide for himself. The final piece of the puzzle lay in the lab. Combining Dante's sample with whatever they could obtain from Gio would prove parentage definitively. But until they secured Joe's DNA, the search would stall. Fate intervened one afternoon when Brook Lynn visited Deception's office. She spotted Gio Martinez on the street below, photocopying flyers for a local mural project. Drawn by impulse, she slipped into an elevator and descended to the lobby just as Gio entered. Heart racing, she followed at a distance down the street, watching him greet neighbors with warm familiarity. She recognized the curve of his smile, the way he tucked stray hair behind his ear, gestures she and Dante both shared. Struck by panic, how could she approach her own son without upending his peaceful life? She retreated, tears blurring her vision. Lulu found her hours later, trembling on a park bench by General Hospital, and held her as she wept. "He's out there," Brook Lynn sobbed. "Right in front of me." Lulu stroked her hair. "We'll find a way." In the days that followed, Chase intercepted an unguarded moment when Gio volunteered at the Port Charles Community Center's art therapy session. Pretending to deliver brushes, Chase slipped a sterile swab into the brush container, later labeling it and transferring it into evidence. When he handed it to Lulu, she nearly cracked a triumphant smile. That night, Brook Lynn, Chase, and Lulu gathered in the Quartermain drawing room, its walls lined with ancestral portraits that seemed to bear silent witness. Under the dim chandelier, Lulu prepared the samples and activated a rapid DNA test, an experimental kit acquired through her journalistic contacts. As the machine whirred, the trio held their breath. When the final result printed, the word match stared back at them in black and white. Brook Lynn's knees buckled as tears of relief and anguish poured down her face. Chase caught her, wrapping her in arms that shook with emotion. Lulu stepped back, her own eyes shining with triumph. "He's your son," Lulu whispered. Brook Lynn nodded, her voice a choked whisper. "My Gio." In that moment, the secret they'd borne alone for so long transformed into a new reality. A son alive, well, and waiting to be told the truth of his origin. But before they could celebrate, they knew the hardest part remained: telling Dante. Would he welcome news of a child he never knew he had? Could their family survive the shock, the betrayal of years of silence? Or would the revelation tear apart the bonds of friendship and love in Port Charles? As dawn broke on the day they planned the confession, Brook Lynn looked at Chase and Lulu, determination shining in her eyes despite the fear that churned within. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with honesty and hope. Because some truths are worth every risk and every tear. Stay tuned, GH fans. The final act of this emotional saga is about to unfold, and when secrets collide with fate, only one certainty remains: no one in Port Charles emerges unscathed.